I had just finished a 4-day business trip in Denver, carrying the pride of having every metric exceed expectations. The software project we had just completed was finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and additional training funds had been approved. I stepped out of the elevator onto the 14th floor, feeling light, but the unusual silence made me stop short. Usually on Monday mornings, the west corridor where my team worked buzzed with chatter, the sound of keyboards, even the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the hall. But today the emptiness was chilling. "Evelyn?" I called out. Normally, my young developer was the earliest to arrive. No response. I walked down the corridor and stopped at our familiar office. The door stood open, revealing a scene that made my heart drop. 7 desks that had once been covered in papers, monitors, and plants were now bare. Only rectangular dust marks remained where the screens once Saturday. Even the cactus I had given the team was gone. I turned and spotted Thomas from accounting walking by. "What happened here?" I asked quickly. He looked at me with a mix of pity and hesitation. "Lily, they moved your team to the basement. Yesterday." The basement? My chest tightened. That part of the building was meant only for storage and maintenance equipment. Why send my engineers there? I stepped into the elevator and pressed B2. The ride down felt endless, each floor passing with growing dread. When the doors opened, a musty odor filled my lungs. I made my way past crates and old pipes until I found a door with a hastily printed sign, "Engineering Team C." I pushed it open. The sight froze me. My team, brilliant people who had carried countless tough projects with me, were crowded among pipes and flickering ceiling lights. Computers sat unsteadily on folding tables. Power cords stretched across the floor. Water dripped from an overhead pipe into a bucket placed right next to Evelyn's desk. "My God," I whispered. "Who did this?" Evelyn looked up, eyes burning with anger and humiliation. "While you were away, Mr. Richard came down with movers. He said we had to clear out immediately to make room for a new specialist. Gave us only 30 minutes to pack." My fists clenched. "A new specialist?" Ben, our youngest programmer, spoke up. He called him a game changer. Promised he'd turn the whole department into a model. We weren't asked a thing. I looked around the dim room. Faces that once shone with confidence were now clouded with defeat. Marcus, our hardware engineer with 28 years of experience, shook his head and muttered, "3 decades of dedication, and this is how it ends?" My throat tightened. Every drip into the bucket echoed the humiliation. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "I need to know who this so-called specialist island." The team exchanged glances before Evelyn answered. "His name is Damien. Yesterday we saw him carrying in trophies and plaques, placing them on your desk, Lily." My eyes narrowed. "My desk?" Without hesitation, I headed back to the elevator and pressed 14. When I arrived, my heart sank. The office that had belonged to my team now held only one person, Damien. He was arranging framed certificates and shiny awards on the shelves. Richard, our department head for barely 6 months, stood beside him, beaming with admiration. "Ah, Lily, you're finally back," Richard said enthusiastically. "Let me introduce Damien, our productivity improvement specialist." At his last company, he boosted efficiency by 250% in just half a year. That's why he needs his own space to implement his methods. I stood still, staring at the chair that had once been mine, now a throne for a stranger. Damien didn't bother to look up, too busy arranging his accolades as if they answered every question. Richard lowered his voice, but still brimmed with pride. "Your team can manage in the basement until the next quarterly budget review. Just a few months." Those words cut like ice. I remembered Evelyn's furious eyes, Marcus's despair, and the drip of water into that old bucket. I swallowed my rage, gave a slight nod, and turned away. I returned to the basement with heavy steps. That damp space had now become our new office, a team of engineers who once carried the company's biggest projects. I looked around. Evelyn hunched over a flickering screen. Ben struggled with a sparking power cord. Marcus leaned against the wall, eyes distant as if ready to give up. "We deserve better than this," I said, trying to steady my voice, but their eyes were clouded with exhaustion. For 8 years, our team had been the one handling more than 70% of the toughest workload. The financial management systems, the testing software for major clients, even the abandoned projects from other groups, all eventually landed here. And we always delivered, never late, never breaking a promise. Yet in one night, all that work vanished, replaced by a dark room underground. Evelyn slammed her keyboard down. "I can't take this anymore, Lily. We've worked 3 times harder than other teams, while they sit in bright offices with cool air conditioning. And here, just look." She pointed to the stained wall where water dripped in steady lines. "We're no better than junk shoved into storage." Marcus gave a dry laugh. "I've given nearly 3 decades to this company, Lily. Now I'm treated like leftover trash. If I retired early, I doubt anyone would care." I clenched my fists. "No, Marcus. You're the only one here who truly understands the hardware systems. Without you, half our contracts would have collapsed long ago. They might not admit it, but I know your worth." Ben jumped in, voice thick with anger. "I've only been here 2 years, but even I see it. This company loves flashy faces more than real results. No one sees us sleeping at the office or Evelyn fighting the testing department to protect our deadlines. All they see is Damien with his framed awards on the wall." The air grew heavy, like the musty smell wrapping around us. I knew if this continued, morale would crumble. And once trust was gone, nothing would keep them here. I stood tall, voice firm. "Listen to me. We cannot let them define our value by this basement. Everything we do will still be recognized, if not here, then somewhere else. But first we prove that even when shoved into the worst conditions, we work with the highest professionalism." Evelyn frowned. "You mean keep delivering no matter how they treat us?" "I mean," I answered, looking at each of them, "we turn this place into proof. Every document, every report, every line of code, every design, everything must be recorded and polished so no one can deny our contribution. If the day comes when we leave, we will walk out with our dignity intact." Marcus lifted his gaze, eyes slowly regaining light. "Lily, maybe you're right. Not for the company, but for ourselves." I nodded. "Exactly. We don't do this for Richard, and we certainly don't for Damien. We do it for ourselves and the person sitting next to us." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then Ben sighed and opened his laptop. Evelyn turned back to her keyboard. I could still see the frustration in them, but at least hope hadn't completely died. From that day, we worked under flickering lights, among the roar of machinery and the stench of mildew, but everyone followed the plan I set. Each manual carefully written, each progress report submitted on time, each line of code annotated with precision. We turned their disdain into silent fuel. Even so, the fatigue grew heavier. 3 days later, I found Evelyn slumped over her keyboard, eyes red. "I sent out job applications," she confessed. "I don't know if I can stay." My chest ached. I knew if one left, the rest would waver. But I also knew Evelyn deserved fairness. I placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "Just be ready. Don't rush. Trust me, I have a plan." In her doubtful eyes, I saw everything slipping from my grasp. If I didn't act soon, the team would scatter. That night, I left the basement and stood on the roof of the parking garage, staring at the city lights below. I whispered to myself, "If they think locking us in the basement is the end, they're wrong. Dead wrong." I knew clearly that if we just sat here complaining, we would be forgotten in the darkness of this basement. So, the very next day, I gathered the whole team. Not as people being pushed into a corner, but like a strategic meeting. Listen to me, I began, voice firm. We can't control how Richard and Damien treat us, but we can absolutely control how we walk out of here if things go too far. And when we leave, we'll leave with dignity, without a single stain. Evelyn frowned. You mean prepare as if we might walk away tomorrow? I nodded. Exactly. From now on, every report, technical document, diagram, even every line of code must be stored in our own system. I want everything clear, ready to hand off instantly. If this company ever decides we're useless, the records will show who truly carried the load. Marcus crossed his arms, a spark in his eyes. I'm exhausted, but if this is what it takes to prove our value, I'm in. Ben looked uneasy. But if they find out, won't they call us traitors? I shook my head. Number, this is professionalism. If they want to look down on us, then we'll show them the professionalism they don't deserve. And more importantly, I have reason to believe what we prepare today will open a better door. I said no more. Inside, I already had leads from a few old contacts in San Francisco, people who had once invited me to collaborate, but right now I couldn't reveal it. The team needed a concrete goal, while the long-term plan would rest on me. From that day, the basement atmosphere shifted. Evelyn stopped venting and instead focused on writing meticulous documentation down to every installation step. Ben, quick and resourceful, handled the secure storage system on a private server. Marcus carefully rewrote hardware diagrams. Only he truly knew. Each person began working as if this was the most important project of their life. Some nights, when the clock had already struck 10 p.m., I looked around the cramped room and saw them still bent over folding tables, scribbling notes. In the pale glow of fluorescent light, I felt a strange pride. We might be buried underground, but no one could take away our self-respect. Of course, Richard didn't care. He occasionally stopped by, tossing out fake pleasantries. Hang in there a little longer. This basement is just temporary. But the arrogance in his eyes whenever he mentioned, Damien said everything. Damien was different. He never once came down to the basement. I heard the 14th floor office had been remodeled just for him. His own desk, natural light, even a private guest lounge. Meanwhile, my team had to walk past 3 storage aisles just to reach a makeshift restroom covered with an old curtain. One morning, Ben handed me a draft report of our workload over the past 3 years. Do you know what percentage of the department's projects we've completed? I glanced at the figure. My heart pounded. 76%. Evelyn gave a bitter laugh. More than 2/3 of the department's work handled by us, yet they shoved us down here. I closed the file, my voice calm but unyielding. This number will be our weapon. Hold on to it. One day, they'll have to face the truth. Marcus braced himself on the table, studying me. Lily, I've followed you for years. You always have a plan. This time, you're hiding something, aren't you? I smiled without answering directly. All I want is to be sure that if we ever leave, we'll leave with our heads high. No begging, no disgrace. We'll leave as the people who created the value this company forgot. No one spoke further, but in their eyes I saw agreement. They had placed their trust in me, and I couldn't fail them. That night, alone in the basement, I opened my personal laptop and sent out a few messages to old contacts on the West Coast. I didn't write much, just, I have a team. They are the best I've ever known. Do you still have room for us? I hit send, then closed the laptop. My heart felt heavy, but the fading light of the screen mirrored the faint hope that had just begun to glow. News of the boardroom presentation reached us overnight. Evelyn came back with the story, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You won't believe it, Lily. Damien stood there in his bright suit, opened with dazzling charts. But when the chief technical officer asked him about the security integration mechanism, he just froze, stammering like a student without homework. I wasn't surprised. Damien could talk endlessly about vision and innovation, but I had never seen him write a single line of code, nor touch a real design. All he had were plaques and a polished image. Marcus let out a dry laugh, his tone bitter. The real joke is Richard still sat there clapping. The board asked two more technical questions. Damien had no clue. Finally, Richard jumped in, declaring this is only the beginning, then quickly switched to growth projections. The whole room looked irritated. Ben lowered his voice. I heard one board member whisper they couldn't believe the head of the department was this ignorant. I looked at their faces, lit with both anger and grim satisfaction. A part of me wanted to laugh too. But more than anyone, I knew this wouldn't immediately change our standing. Richard had placed his bet on Damien, and he wouldn't admit his mistake so easily. Don't celebrate yet, I reminded the group. One failed presentation isn't enough to change how they treat us. If we're careless, they'll turn the blame on us. Evelyn sneered. You think Richard dares to blame us? He's the one who shoved us down here. I shook my head. He'll find excuses, and don't forget we're still branded as outdated. Damien failed, but Richard will say we refuse to embrace the new methods. Marcus tapped his fingers on the table, thoughtful. So we prepare more, record everything we do, make it undeniable. Exactly, I said, meeting each gaze. Now is when our records must be sharpest. The next day, Richard came into the basement, face strained, but still trying to project authority. He spoke in a syrupy tone I had never heard. I know the conditions here aren't easy, but please understand, we're in transition. Damien is bringing revolutionary methods. I need you to support him fully. Evelyn nearly burst out laughing, but I quickly signaled her to stay quiet. I answered for the team. We always do our part, Richard. But remember, numbers speak for themselves, not empty promises. For a moment, I saw annoyance flicker in his eyes, but seconds later, he forced a smile and left. When the door closed, Ben whispered, He knows. He knows Damien just bombed. I nodded. Yes. But that's exactly why Richard will cling even harder to his illusion. He won't let go easily. As for us, we keep working, keep recording everything. The day they're forced to face the truth, we'll have the proof. Over the next 3 days, news trickled down from the 14th floor. Damien was given another chance to present to potential clients, but again faltered when asked for specifics. One client walked out early, leaving Richard scrambling to explain. The story spread through the company, whispers that the Golden Star was nothing but talk. In the basement, our atmosphere shifted. Despair gave way to a simmering sense of anticipation. Evelyn smiled faintly as she wrote documents. Marcus stayed late, and Ben constantly updated the numbers into complete charts. They knew that if we held on, the truth would surface. One evening, as I was about to leave, Marcus called out, Lily, are you sure we should just wait, or should we release the data now? I stopped, looked him in the eye. Not yet. We only get one chance to turn this around. If we act too soon, Richard will bury it or twist it. But if we wait until the board's patience is gone, then our data becomes the killing blow. Marcus nodded slowly. I see. One strike, but it has to be fatal. I smiled faintly. Exactly. And when that moment comes, it won't just be Damien. Richard won't have a place either. As I stepped out of the building into the night, the cold wind struck my face. Inside, I knew this power game had only just begun, and I would never let my team stay buried in that basement forever. That day, I decided it was time to strike. For weeks, we had endured the basement, carefully logging data and perfecting reports. But Damien's repeated failures had stirred unrest throughout the company. That was the opportunity I needed. In the morning, I invited an old friend to visit Talia Hayes, the CEO of Grayscale, a major tech company expanding into the field my team specialized in. Talia was a few years older than me, started as an engineer, and had once worked alongside me on an international project 10 years ago. I knew she wasn't the type to be dazzled by tricks or empty titles. When she entered the building, Talia carried herself with calm confidence, dressed in a light gray suit, her sharp gaze unwavering. I deliberately timed our arrival for when Richard would be showcasing Damien to potential clients on the 14th floor. The moment we appeared, Richard's cheer was almost theatrical. "Oh, Lily, perfect timing. This is Damien, our productivity specialist, and here we have guests from Westbridge. Why don't you introduce your companion?" I smiled. "This is Talia Hayes, CEO of Grayscale. She's interested in new management approaches, so I thought she might want to hear directly from Damien." Richard's face lit up instantly, and Damien seized the chance to perform. He launched into a grand speech about his three-phase model and 2 to 100% productivity boost in 1 quarter. His voice boomed, hands waving dramatically as if painting visions in the air. When he finished, Damien glanced around with triumph. But Talia didn't clap, didn't smile. She simply tilted her head and asked evenly, "You said you applied this method at Northwest Technologies and achieved 2 to 100% growth. I currently serve on Northwest Advisory Board. During your tenure, the company recorded 3 consecutive quarters of delays and lost 2 major contracts. Can you explain that contradiction?" The room fell silent. The clients exchanged looks. Damien stammered, scrambling. "Maybe some data was misinterpreted." Talia cut in, her voice cold. "There's no misinterpretation. I personally reviewed the reports. What you presented is inflated, if not outright false." Richard's face flushed purple as he tried to intervene. "It must be a misunderstanding." Damien has, but I interrupted, my tone calm as ice. "There is no misunderstanding, Richard. I invited Talia because the truth needed verification. And now we all see it." The air grew heavy. One of the clients stood, politely shook Richard's hand. "Thank you for the introduction, but we'll need to reconsider any partnership." They left, the silence in their wake louder than any words. Damien bowed his head, the framed awards behind him now meaningless. Richard looked at me with a mix of fury and panic. "Lily," he forced his voice steady, "what's your intention bringing?" "Talia here?" I answered slowly, each word sharp as a blade. "My intention is truth. And one more thing. Talia has offered my team positions at Grayscale with transparency and respect. We've accepted. Next week we're leaving." Richard's face shifted from flushed red to pale white. He blurted, "You can't! That's stealing staff betrayal." Talia raised a brow, replying crisply, "Completely legal. Their contracts have no restrictive clauses. If you can't keep your people, the fault lies in how you treat them, not anyone else." I met Richard's eyes, calm, smile unwavering. "You underestimated us. Now, you'll pay the price." I left that boardroom feeling as though I had just placed a decisive piece on the chessboard. Talia walked beside me, her eyes glowing with certainty. "Lily, I don't just want you and your team to join Grayscale," she said quietly. "I want you to become the backbone of our new engineering division. Double your current salaries, full autonomy, and most importantly, respect." I nodded lightly, though inside me a storm raged. For years, we had poured everything into this company, only to be repaid with a damp basement and disdain. This was the door out. When I returned to the basement, the whole team shot up, eyes filled with anticipation. Evelyn asked nervously, "What happened up there, Lily?" I smiled, my voice steady and clear. "We're leaving. Talia has invited us all to Grayscale. Contracts are being drawn, salaries doubled, proper working conditions. Next week, we begin." Silence fell, then erupted into cheers. Ben hugged Evelyn tightly. while Marcus covered his eyes, trying to hide the emotion welling inside. I knew for a man with 28 years here, walking away wasn't easy. But now, even he could see hope. "You're serious?" Evelyn whispered, her eyes brimming. "Absolutely," I answered. "We've endured enough. It's time to go somewhere we're valued." The joy had barely settled when the door burst open. Richard appeared, pale-faced, sweat glistening on his forehead. His eyes darted around before locking onto me. "Lily, I heard, but you can't do this." His voice trembled, stripped of its usual arrogance. "If your team leaves, I lose everything. The board already doubts me after Damien's disaster. You'll destroy my career." Marcus arched a brow, his reply sharp. "You destroyed it yourself, Richard. The moment you shoved us into this basement." Richard shook his head, stepping closer, almost pleading. "I'll make it right. I'll move you back to the 14th floor, raise salaries 15%. I'll eliminate all unfairness." I straightened, keeping my voice calm. "You think 15% can buy back 8 years of dedication and dignity? You called Damien a game changer while we were shoved underground. The truth is, Richard, you made your choice. And we've made ours." Evelyn added coldly, "We're choosing a future without you." Richard froze, lips quivering, his composure cracked, eyes empty. For the first time since he sat in that chair, I knew Richard truly understood he had lost. "Please," he whispered, pride gone. "I could lose my title, everything. Lily, give me another chance." I met his eyes, each word like a verdict. "Your chance was the first day you took over this department. You could have chosen to respect the team that built its success. Instead, you chose a man of empty promises. We owe you nothing now." The room went silent. The drip of water from the pipes above only deepened the weight of the moment. Richard's shoulders sagged as he turned away, his steps unsteady. Ben watched him leave, murmuring, "What do you think he'll do next?" "That's no longer our concern," I replied firmly. "Our only task is preparing to step into a new chapter, one where we're truly recognized." The team nodded, their eyes burning with more than joy. It was resolve. We would leave not as cast-offs, but as victors, carrying our skill as living proof of Richard and Damien's failure. That night, I stayed later than the others. Looking around the basement, tangled wires and damp walls, I realized this prison had become a milestone. Tomorrow, we'd sign with Grayscale. And next week, when we walked out of this building, no one would ever again call us the ones left in the basement. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. One thought cut through like ice. Richard thought losing us meant he had already lost. But in truth, the worst for him hadn't even begun. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from the CEO's office. The secretary wrote simply, "The CEO wants to meet with you privately at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Absolute discretion required." My heart raced. I knew this wasn't just a casual chat. On the appointed day, I stepped into the top floor of the building. The office of Evelyn Carter, the CEO, who had been with the company for more than 20 years, was expansive, its glass walls overlooking the city skyline. Evelyn, in her early 50s, carried herself with lean poise, her sharp gaze softened only by a trace of hard-earned experience. "Lily, thank you for coming." She removed her glasses and gestured toward the chair in front of her desk. "I want to speak frankly. Sit down." I kept my tone calm. "I'm ready to listen." Evelyn flipped through several files on the desk. "I've reviewed the last 5 years of data. Most of the technical milestones, from the digital banking project to the audit software, were handled by your team. 76% of successful completions, according to the records. Meanwhile, Richard funneled budget and prime office space into a so-called rising star who turned out to be incompetent. I wasn't surprised she knew everything, but the fact she acknowledged it so directly made me cautious. To be honest, Evelyn continued, the board has already started questioning Richard. But the bigger issue is this. I can't afford to lose your entire team. If you all leave for Grayscale, we lose not only talent but credibility. I looked straight at her. So, what do you want from me? To stop us from leaving? Evelyn smiled, not denying it. Not stop, but retain you by doing right. I'm proposing a new engineering division that reports directly to me, bypassing Richard. You will lead it. Full autonomy, full resources, even more than what Talia Hayes promised. Her words hit like a hammer against my resolve. I had braced myself to walk away, leaving behind bitterness. But now Evelyn wasn't just offering a job, she was offering real power. I asked slowly, why now? Why not 6 months ago, when Richard shoved us into the basement? A flicker of weariness crossed her face. Internal politics, Lily. The board wanted to experiment with Richard's new approach. I couldn't openly oppose them. But now, after Damien's string of failures, I have grounds to pivot. And you are the key piece. I clenched my hands, torn. On one side was Talia, a trusted old friend who had welcomed us with promises of fairness. On the other was an unprecedented chance, building an entire division with resources flowing directly from the CEO. Are you certain the board will approve? I challenged. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice firm. I'll guarantee it. But I need your answer within 48 hours. If I announce the plan without your consent, I lose credibility. If you agree, the board cannot refuse. They need results, and you are living proof. I stayed silent. She slid a thick proposal across the desk. This is official. Hiring authority, budget control, double the current salaries for your entire team, and more importantly, your name listed as a future successor. I raised my head and locked eyes with her. You're using us as pawns to take down Tuning. Richard. Evelyn nodded without flinching. Yes, but it's mutual benefit. You get what you deserve, and I remove a liability damaging this company. Both sides win. I picked up the proposal and stood. I need to discuss this with my team. They've put their trust in me, and I won't decide for them. Leaving her office, I paused by the glass wall, gazing down at the traffic below. I realized this was no longer about simply staying or leaving. It had become a power game, and I was at the center. That evening, in the basement, I laid the proposal out before my team. Evelyn, Ben, and Marcus read silently until their eyes froze on the bold header. Special Engineering Division, reporting directly to the CEO. Evelyn looked up first, her voice trembling. Lily, this is an opportunity we've never had. But what about Grayscale? Marcus spoke low. We already gave Talia our word. Walking away now would feel like betrayal. Ben interjected, eyes lit. But if we stay, we'll have real authority. No more being dismissed, no more basement. I listened to each of them, turmoil churning inside me. This wasn't just about jobs, it was about honor, about the future. And I knew, whichever path we chose, it would change our lives forever. I drew a deep breath, my voice firm. We'll deliberate carefully. But remember, this isn't just about staying or leaving. It's about deciding who truly controls this game. Their eyes fixed on me, waiting. And within me echoed the question I couldn't escape. Could I both honor my promise to Talia and seize the chance Evelyn was offering? Or would I have to choose a side and turn that choice into the spark that would ignite everything? The basement room fell silent as I set the CEO's proposal on the table. Evelyn stared at me with doubt in her eyes. Marcus folded his arms in deep thought, while Ben couldn't hide his excitement. The whole team seemed trapped between two paths. On one side was our promise to Talia, the one who welcomed us when we were cast aside. On the other was an unprecedented opportunity, power, resources, and official recognition from the CEO. I stayed quiet for a long time, listening to every breath. Finally, I spoke slowly. If we choose only one side, we fall into the same trap, letting someone else control our fate. But if we play it right, We can turn both offers into a strategy no one dares challenge. Everyone looked up. Evelyn frowned. What do you mean? I stood, drawing a line on the makeshift whiteboard. We split the team in two. One half stays, reporting directly to the CEO with strong resources and autonomy. The other half joins Talia at Grayscale, opening a new door. They may look separate, but in truth, we connect them into one network. We'll coordinate quietly, share knowledge, and support each other. That way, neither the CEO nor Talia can fully control us. Ben's jaw dropped. Like a hidden alliance. Marcus nodded, eyes lighting up. Smart. If one side betrays us, we still have a backup. No one can corner us again. Evelyn still hesitated. But will Talia agree? And the CEO, will she accept a divided team? I answered firmly, I'll convince both. For Talia, it's a chance to have direct insight into her competitor. For the CEO, it's proof we're not abandoning her completely, still dedicating strength to keep the company afloat. Both will see the gain outweighs the risk. A tense silence hung over us. Then Marcus broke it with steady conviction. I'll stay. I want to prove that my 28 years of work meant something. Evelyn sighed but smiled. I'll go with you to Grayscale. I can't forgive this basement, and I need a fresh start. Ben looked around, hesitated, then said, I'll join Grayscale too. I want to test myself in an open environment. The others made their choices one by one. I listened, noted, and finally concluded. Good. We'll divide by strength. The group that stays will handle the core projects the company depends on. The group that goes to Grayscale will develop new solutions, creating direct competition. And I paused, meeting every gaze. I'll be the bridge. I'll advise both sides, split my time and resources, making sure we're never sidelined again. Marcus chuckled softly. Lily, this isn't survival strategy, this is chess. I nodded, a strange fire rising inside me. For the first time, we were no longer waiting for decisions from above. We were the ones setting the rules. That evening, I called Talia first. She was surprised at first, but after hearing the plan, she laughed with delight. Lily, you haven't changed. Back in our international project, you were the one who made opposing sides sit at the same table. I'll agree as long as we keep close communication and absolute confidentiality. The next morning, I walked into the CEO's office with the completed proposal. Evelyn Carter read every page in silence. When she finished, she looked up, eyes sharp. You're forcing me to share power. But I also see that if you really left, this company would collapse faster. I'll accept. But remember, Lily, every eye will be on you. Don't make me regret it. I smiled calmly. You won't. From now on, we won't be trapped in basements anymore. We'll be the bridge, and both sides will need that bridge. Leaving the CEO's office, I knew everything had changed forever. We were no longer just a cast-off engineering team. We had become a force, a network strong enough that anyone would think twice before underestimating us. And from that moment, I swore no one would ever diminish us again. Lily's story isn't just about a team of engineers forced into a basement and then fighting to reclaim their dignity. It mirrors reality. So many people in the workplace have been overlooked, their hard work overshadowed by those company steady who only know how to show off. The lesson is clear. True value doesn't come from flashy promises, but from results and perseverance. With unity and smart strategy, injustice can be turned into strength, and recognition can be won back. What do you think of Lily's bold decision and her team's choice to split forces so they'd never be underestimated again? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful family life stories.